Hey everybody, it's Ozone, and we are back once again in the testing house on a testing world. You know what time it is. It's time for another update roundup. It has been a long time since we've had an update to report on, but it's finally here. Update 14 has finally been released. It's been just over 4 months. Can you believe it? 4 months since the last update. And there's been a lot of good reasons for that. If you follow in the community, well, you'll know what Iskal's talked about. And if you haven't, well, the bottom line is Iskal's been focused on playing on Hermitcraft. He's been enjoying it, and it's had an effect on the Vault Hunter's development as a result. And, after the push for update 12 and 13, they needed a break anyway. As usual, there's a really massive change that's happened in this update, and that is also why it's taken so long to complete. It has to do with crystal crafting. The very core concept of Vault Hunters has been basically completely redone. Well, at least the part about modifying crystals anyway. Now, one of the fundamental things that's changed about this revision is Vault Rock. Prior to this, mining Vault Rock would give you chipped Vault Rock, and you would have to use those chips in order to make a crystal. And they looked a little something like that. But now you get the Vault Rocks directly from the Vault Stone. Chipped Vault Rocks aren't a thing anymore. Neither is crafting a crystal in order to place it into the Vault Altar. So you just take that Vault Rock that you just picked up and pop it into the altar for your recipe. And just like before, once you complete the recipe and press the button, then you can get your Vault Crystal. Ba-ding! So while most of that is unchanged, what has drastically changed is the part after this where you can modify the crystal. You can still take the crystal and put it into a portal and run the vault unmodified just like before. But if you want to modify it, that is now extremely different. And the biggest part of that has to do with this capacity line that you see on the crystal here. Every vault crystal now has a capacity, much like your tools have a capacity. And that was the entire goal, to make it easier to fabricate crystals and modify them, but give them a limit, just like they do with jewels on your tools. And so looking at this crystal once again, we see that the capacity is level 50 because I'm level 50. And that capacity increases 1 for each level that you have. So to prove that point, I've set my level to 53 and completed another crystal. And see, level 53 with 53 capacity. So that's all well and good, but now the question is, how do we modify the crystals? Previously we needed an anvil, but not anymore. Bye, anvil. Instead, we need another new block. This is the crystal workbench. And it looks pretty darn good with the crystal on the side of it. And opening it up, we have an interface that is very much like the jewel applicator, and this is very much intentional. So we take our crystal and put it here, and you can see in the output what the resulting crystal will be. And all of this is for all of the modifiers that we can add to it. We're talking about things that can be added in multiples to a crystal. So your catalysts, your inscriptions, and your charms. The other things are only allowed 1 per crystal, and they have a dedicated slot up here. This one is for a seal, this one is for an augment, and this one is a new concept called a capstone, which is to say that something that's going to make the crystal to be unmodifiable. The capstone is intended to be the final thing that you put on the crystal, because after you put the capstone on, the crystal will no longer be modifiable. It caps off the crystal, so to speak. And so the overall result is a crafting process that's much more streamlined and a lot easier to understand for new players. Now, obviously, there are a few special circumstances that have changed as a result of this process, and we'll go over some of those a little bit later. For right now, I want to focus on catalysts and inscriptions. The catalyst creation process has also been significantly revamped and streamlined as a result. Now you craft the specific catalyst that you want. And I really like how each of the catalysts looks like the thing that it's meant to be. The ornate catalyst looks like an ornate chest. The gilded catalyst looks like a gilded chest. And that is just so intuitive and very nice. These are a little bit more abstract, but you can tell well enough what they are. Notice that each catalyst also has a size. And that size will be always 10. So that means it's not possible to add a catalyst to a crystal until after level 10, because once you reach level 10, your crystal will have a capacity of 10 and you can support the catalyst on it. But it also means you can't add too many catalysts to your crystals when you're very low level either. And that's the balancing factor. But the trade-off for that is that you have no randomness to it. You get to craft exactly what you want, and a lot of people really enjoy that. So for instance, say I want to go for a lot of knowledge, well, we can just craft up a few of these living catalysts and then put them onto the crystal that we have over here. And notice it says that we have 33 capacity left, and we're getting a 2 times living modifier, which is going to result in 50% more living chests. Now, just like before, the crafted catalysts also come with a random negative, and so we see that we have 2 random negatives on here. The same goes for inscriptions. Now, I don't think that this crafting process changed in this revision. I'm a little rusty on this point, honestly, but if we craft up one of these inscriptions, you see that it also has a size modifier on it, again, size 10. And so back at the crystal workbench, we can add the inscription into this area, and now we see that it's going to contain 1 mushroom. But there's also a very, very big change about how the rooms are added to the vault when you add an inscription to your crystal. Previously, you would get a vault with only that room in it, and you would have to first craft an architect's crystal to build the vault. Well, now you're just adding the inscription to a regular old vault crystal, so it's a lot easier to do. But there's a trade-off for that, in that the room just appears somewhere in the vault. But don't worry. They tell you where it's at, but you're still going to have to go through regular vault rooms in order to go get it. But honestly, this isn't really a bad thing in my mind. Previously, your inscriptions had a percentage completion and a time on them, and none of that matters now. So the process for using inscriptions on a crystal is also greatly simplified, with a little bit of extra work in terms of finding the right room within the vault. And again, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. So now we've seen catalyst and inscriptions being used in the crystal workbench, but there is one other thing that can also go in there. Your old charms. Notice that the charm itself also has a size on there, and so by adding it, we've used up pretty much all the capacity that there is, but we can see that there's now also this modifier added to it. Although, looks like there might be a bug with this. This says 33, and this charm has 38%. I thought that should be 38. Well, maybe that'll get fixed. Maybe that's intentional. I don't think it is, though. And so the last things to talk about are these single-use items up here. The seal works just like you would expect it to, meaning you place your seal there and that sets the objective for the vault. Now, if you do happen to have a seal of the architect left over, well, it doesn't go. So the GUI is smart enough to only allow you to put things in there that are allowed. And the same goes for augments as well. They can pop in there and you can see a little bit of change here. Notice we've got the purple crystal now with the IC augment added to it. And that gives you a visual indicator of what you're going to get, as well as the textual indicator over here in the description as well. The last slot here is a capstone. Remember, this is the thing that is supposed to be added last to the crystal and will make it unmodifiable if you add a capstone to it. Now, I have a capstone here. Update 13 added tokens that you could get when you returned to a god altar after having completed it. You got the result of the god altar challenge immediately, and if you came back to that altar that issued the challenge, then you got the token. And the token had to be added to a crystal and would make it unmodifiable. And so that's where this capstone idea comes from. Any tokens in your inventory should be changed to this capstone, and you can add it right here into this slot, and it will tell you that the crystal is now unmodifiable as a result, but it will also add Windar's favor to the list of things that you get on the crystal. So functionally it's the same, it's just called a capstone instead of a token now. Now because this is a workbench, none of this is permanent until we hit this button. So we could pull out one of the inscriptions and the capacity is updated as a result. Like I said, it allows you to just experiment and see what you can afford to fit onto it. But once you hit this, everything gets locked in place, all of your resources get consumed, and now we have our crystal with all of the items on it. But wait a minute, I hear you screaming. What about Plunderer's pearls? What about Warden's pearls? All of these kinds of things. And the answer is that you now get these things by crafting a crystal of that specific type directly. And then adding catalysts and inscriptions and other things to it using the crystal workbench. So the Warden's Vault Rock is basically the same recipe that you had as a Warden's Pearl, except there's a Vault Rock in the middle and you get a Vault Rock out of it. And then with that Vault Rock crafted, you add it to your altar and complete the crystal recipe as normal. And so this is what I was hinting at previously with how some things have changed. They don't exactly line up exactly the way they used to be because, well, the whole system's changed, but you could still get there. Similarly, the Plunderer's Vault Rock is basically the same recipe as a Plunderer's Pearl. The Architect Vault Rock is basically the same thing as an Architect Seal. The Paradox Vault Rock is basically the same recipe as the Paradox Seal. Instead of finding Chaos Seals, now you find Chaotic Vault Rock in treasure chests, as well as Glazed Vault Rock, which is how you get to the Cake Vaults. And that's because all of these things were unmodifiable from the beginning. So when you create a crystal using one of these special vault rocks, the crystal is unmodifiable already. And so as a result, they have no place at all in the crystal workbench, because they always have been and are supposed to be unmodifiable from the very beginning. And as a result, a lot of the confusion about crafting crystals, what things made it unmodifiable, what things you could add, when you could add it, things like that, has been overall greatly reduced and simplified through this workbench. And overall, I'd say this is a really, really good quality of life change. One really important thing that I had forgotten to mention is that this capacity is not a hard limit. You can add multiple things to it until you use up all the capacity, and then you can overfill it. And you see we've got an icon here indicating that we're getting a curse. There is one curse that's been added. So for everything that you add to your crystal, once you're out of capacity, you get a curse. And these curses are pretty darn bad, honestly. But I guess it's one thing to say it and it's another to show it. So let's do this crystal and we'll go run a cursed one. Before we run that cursed vault though, let's go back and run the vault that has the inscriptions added to it. So do you remember I said that the special rooms that you add via the inscriptions are just in the vault somewhere. And if you add any inscriptions to your crystal, you'll get a layout like this at the start of the vault. And this layout tells you where to find the rooms that you added. Right here in front of me, this chiseled vault rock, that is the start room where we're at right now. And so if we want to go visit these two mushrooms, we have to kind of go around the vault and off to the side. Luckily, they're fairly close together, and that doesn't seem like it would be too hard to do, especially since we're dealing with a full vault timer of 25 minutes. So I think this is a really clever way of making it so that you can get to the rooms that you added via the inscriptions, and you can still do the entire rest of the vault. Notice, of course, that we have the elixir objective, and we've got the ice theme, which is what I added via the crystal workbench. Now, just a quick word to all you out there that are thinking, ooh, I can get some free inscriptions. No, no, you can't. While you may be able to mine the vault rock that's underneath it, the inscriptions themselves are just rendered on top and can't be collected. So, yeah, sorry, you can't cheat the system that way. Nice try, though. And now it's on to the Cursed Vault. That sounds like that should be the name of a movie, doesn't it? You're going to be impressed by the amount of bad stuff we get here. You may think just 2 curses isn't that bad, but it's not 2 curses. Getting a single curse adds multiple effects, all of which are bad. You see this bedrock? This is the incompleteness that's been added. Do you not see the brazier here? That's because it didn't generate, and those are only 2 of the curses. Some of the mobs can put negative status effects on you. Some of them will be immortal. There will be random TNT explosions, void liquid, and other nastiness as well. So one curse is really like 5 or 6 negative effects that really compounds very quickly as you add the curses on. But let's just see what we got. See, there we go. There's an immortal one right there. Ethereal is the right word, actually. We've got some random bedrock around. I really don't know why these spawners are here, but okay. Oh, I bet these are where we get the TNT. I bet this is what makes the TNT, and because I'm in creative mode, they're not going off. Oh, and look, it's some void liquid. Watch that timer go down very quickly. Yeah, okay, so I'm showing you this is pretty bad. We've got a lot of bedrock, there's some more void liquid, and these are all TNT. So personally, I think this is way overkill. Probably way more bad than they really ought to be. I would rather see a hard cap than a flexible cap that gets these curses instead. But That's just me. If you're a real hardcore player, you may really, really like this. I guess that's the beauty of the game. And it wouldn't surprise me if we have a game rule coming out later that lets us kind of tweak this stuff. But for right now, yeah, curses. Bad. Back home safe and sound, it's time to talk about a couple more changes that are related to this. Yeah, I told you it was big. Previously, there were two expertise that dealt with crystal crafting and infusing. That was the Infuser and Mystic. But now Mystic has been replaced by Crystalmancer. Crystalmancer gives you extra capacity on your crystals as you craft them, up to 15 extra capacity, which is at least an extra catalyst and potentially two for those in-between levels. I feel like the plus 10 is definitely useful. The plus 15 I think is a whole lot less useful because I don't believe that there is anything that takes only 5 capacity to add to your crystal. The other skill, Infuser, is supposed to be removed from the game, but I still have it anyway on my list. And if you had put points into it, I would use the creative commands to or give yourself those expertise points back, or just use a neuralizer. Your system admin should be able to help you out. Because unfortunately the game doesn't automatically remove this particular skill and refund your expertise points. So like I said, that'll have to be done either through creative or with the help of your system administrator. For what it's worth, though, they say update 15 is supposed to have something that's going to replace Infuser when it releases in July. Alright, well now it's on to the very short list of other changes that are not related to crystals and their modifiers. The XP reward that you get for completing bounties is now significantly higher as you get into higher levels. Previously, bounties were extremely effective at low levels and basically worthless the higher the levels that you got, at least in terms of XP. You could still get some good stuff from a bounty, and you still can, but now that's been balanced out a little bit more. And as you can see, 14,000 XP for a common bounty is quite a lot. I would say that is a whole lot better than it was. After level 10, your quests should unlock in large chunks. This will help to keep you from getting deadlocked or bottlenecked by one quest when you want to move on into another. I know in my playthrough, I used a knowledge star before I got to the quest for it, and it felt a little wrong, Unfortunately, I'm not able to show you here because I've already unlocked all the quests. But that's a change that's supposed to be in here as well. Additionally, the fire shot specialization of Fireball now scales in mana as it gets more powerful, and they say this is to make that skill more viable in the early game. Next to last, they say that the treasure chests in treasure rooms has had their loot buffed once again. Again, this is hard to show, but that's what the patch notes say. And the last thing is that the paradoxical gem has been removed. This is the gem that resets your paradox vault, something you probably don't ever want to do, but the capability is there just in case. The capability is still there, you just don't do it with the paradoxical gem. Instead, you have to build a paradox crystal and then drop it into void liquid. Now, I don't know about you, but that is not intuitive at all. I felt like the paradox gem was much more intuitive and much more in keeping with the spirit of the game. So I don't know that I like this change all that much. Now, the Paradox Gem was incredibly expensive, so I do like not having to spend the resources on it, but it just doesn't make much sense to drop it into a void liquid for 5 seconds. But that's the way it is after Update 14. Oh, and there you have it, the changes that are new in Update 14. Now, if you haven't been watching Iskal's second channel, Vodskull85, and catching the leaks that he's been posting about future plans for Vault Hunters, I'll do my best to summarize that real quick here. First of all, there will be an Update 15 scheduled for mid-July, and that will coincide with the start of the Season 4 of the Vault Hunters SMP. Update 15 will have greed levels and things past level 100, a couple new vault objectives as I understand it, and I'm sure other things as well. After that, there will be Update 16, according to Iskal, and that will be the last update for Vault Hunters 3rd edition. At that point, they say that they're going to start working on the next version of Vault Hunters, and it's going to be one that is loader agnostic. It's going to support plain vanilla Minecraft, as well as the Fabric, Forge, and Quilt loaders. And so this is going to have some really, really big impacts to the game. Now, personally, I don't believe that they'll stop making patches after update 16. I feel like they're going to keep making patches through the remainder of the Vault Hunters SMP season. But that's just my opinion. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they do with Vault Hunters 4th edition. But as usual, this is just my summary of what I remember seeing. I could be wrong, and of course, it can always change. But anyway, I really hope you enjoyed this Update 14 Roundup, and I would appreciate any comments pointing out things that I've missed or mistakes that I've made. A like would be amazing, and subscribe if you really like it. So thank you so much again for making it to the end of the video. Until next time, remember, be excellent to each other. I'm out.